I really can't make anything out of it. It's just really, really tough. Honestly, every lap that I did in qualifying just was worse and worse. So yeah.
That's Max Verstappen, live on team radio, during Hungarian Grand Prix qualifying, said in the heat of the moment with no engineer able to talk him out of it or soften it before it went out over the broadcast, unfiltered, to millions of people watching at home. His engineers hadn't found the problem yet. He had. Here's what he actually said, in full. Asked afterward to explain it, Verstappen didn't reach for excuses, didn't blame the tires, didn't blame the track surface, didn't blame a setup call from the pit wall. He named the exact mechanism himself, unprompted. The weekend has been difficult in general, but when instead of the tires degrading, your car is degrading, then you have a big problem. So that's what's happening. Not tire wear, the usual explanation for a car slowing down late in a stint. Not driver error either, the other easy explanation reporters often reach for. The car itself getting physically worse to drive as the laps went on, lap after lap, with no obvious external cause. That's a specific, falsifiable claim, the kind that either checks out against the data or it doesn't. Made in real time, over the radio, before any engineer had run a single post-session analysis, and before the team had any telemetry to confirm or deny it. He kept going. That's obviously not what you want during qualifying, and by that point, you can't even adjust the front wing anymore. Then the whole car is no longer in the right balance. Locked out setup, mid-session, with the balance already gone and no mechanical way left to correct it before the lap that actually counted, the exact lap his entire grid position depended on. He described it as basically impossible to find a workable window, using language that sounded less like frustration and more like genuine diagnosis, the tone of someone describing a fault, not venting about one. This weekend has been very difficult, and qualifying was just completely hopeless. There was absolutely nothing you could do with it. Asked if this constant weekend-to-weekend uncertainty had become desperate, his answer went further than the question actually asked. No, desperate? That word doesn't even exist for me anymore. A response that reads less like denial and more like someone who's simply moved past the emotional stage of the problem entirely. Okay, before we go any further, make sure you're smashing that hype button, because this is where the team actually catches up to what he already knew. Weeks later, Max said this to reporters about the same underlying issue in a completely different context, with no obvious prompt from Verstappen's radio message weeks earlier. I think it's fair to say that only Lando was clearly faster than Max, so I guess it's positive because it means that we have margin to improve. Read what that actually is, and don't let the calm delivery undersell how significant an admission this actually was. Not a driver complaint being politely acknowledged for the cameras. The team confirming, after the fact, in their own words, using their own data, that the car itself had margin they hadn't yet located, the exact thing Verstappen had already diagnosed over the radio weeks earlier, before any engineer on the pit wall had the telemetry to back him up or the vocabulary to describe it the way he just had live, on air. This isn't one bad weekend, and it isn't isolated to Hungary specifically, which is really the point worth sitting with. Max has separately confirmed the RB22 has been very sensitive to a number of small factors since race 1, sitting on the edge of its performance window all season, a phrase that's really just a technical way of saying the car has been unpredictable from the very first race weekend of the year, not something that appeared out of nowhere in Hungary specifically. And in a more remarkable admission, one that goes well beyond a normal press conference platitude, Max told reporters directly, the fact is that Max feels things that we can't measure with our current data analysis and sensors in the car. This is the result of his extraordinary sensitivity in the car and the technical level he has in him. I dare say that all the other teams wouldn't notice the things that Max feels in the car, but we can't see in the data. That's Red Bull's own team principal, on the record, in his own words, unprompted, saying his driver's instinct is outrunning his own engineering department, not once, but as a season-long pattern he's willing to state publicly, on camera, with his own name attached to it. There's another front to this too, one that rarely makes it into the same conversation as the car's on-track handling. Earlier this season, the FIA ranked Red Bull's engine as the benchmark power unit on the grid, based on data gathered across the first 5 races of the year. That ranking meant Red Bull qualified for 0 development tokens on their engine for the rest of the season, while rivals sitting further back in the same measurement were awarded 2 separate upgrade windows each. Verstappen said openly that he was surprised by the ranking and didn't fully understand how the FIA had actually reached that conclusion. A rare moment of a driver questioning the numbers rather than the car. Whatever the technical justification behind the FIA's methodology turns out to be, the practical result on track is the same either way. Verstappen isn't just fighting his own car's week-to-week inconsistency race after race. He's simultaneously fighting a set of rules that officially decided, on paper, that his engine doesn't need any help at all, while he's the one actually driving it every single lap that says otherwise. In real conditions, the regulation's own data didn't seem to capture accurately. Put it together, plainly, without any extra spin added on top of it. A driver diagnosing a specific mechanical problem out loud, in real time, before the data existed anywhere to prove it one way or the other. A team principal admitting weeks later, in his own words, that the diagnosis was right all along. A separate admission that this same driver can feel things happening in the car that Red Bull's own sensors genuinely can't detect. And a regulatory ranking that's already limited how much help the car can even receive going forward, regardless of what anyone on the team wants. This isn't really a story about a driver complaining on the radio. It's a story about a driver whose read on his own machine is, by his own team's own repeated admission, sharper than the actual instruments built specifically to measure it, which raises an uncomfortable question about how much of this season's struggles were actually preventable. Zandvoort is next, Verstappen's home race, and the first real test of whether anything Red Bull's engineers have actually found since Hungary genuinely solves what he called out weeks ago in real time, before anyone else had the numbers to back him up. Our next video breaks down whether Zandvoort proves Red Bull actually listened, or whether this exact pattern simply continues into another race weekend with a different circuit and the same underlying story. Is Max the best diagnostic tool Red Bull has, better than their own engineers and their own sensors combined? Tell us in the comments. Smash that hype button, subscribe, and we'll see you at Zandvoort.